Hi everyone, this is Gulab here, and now I'm continuing to talk about the hollow earth, and this is the Sims theory of concentric spheres. And so I'm going to continue talking a little bit here. It is now generally conceded that a vast open ocean exists in the polar regions, and Professor Mori holds that this open sea results from the flow of warm submarine currents from the equatorial regions of the Earth, north and south, causing the counterflow up upon the surface of mighty currents from the Arctic regions. Further discoveries may throw more light upon this mysterious subject and explain these ocean currents in connection with the interior currents of the Earth across the verges in both directions, and thus demonstrate the truth of Captain Sim's theory. The highest altitude of the sun is not at noon in high altitude, but at some time after, as Captain Perry informs us. The meridian lines on which the sun is at noon come up from the equator at right angles until they reach the outer edge of the verge, where they deflect to the right over and along the surface of the verge to a point underneath the highest part of the same. This deflection, as well as the angularity of the plane of the verge with the equator, would cause the sun in latitude and over the verge to have the highest altitude after midday. Beyond longitude 160 degrees west from London, this deflection of meridian lines is to the left. In the Pacific Ocean, in longitude and latitude, answering to the lowest part of the verge, or that part of its nearest the equator, navigators have observed opposite the sun a luminous belt or ring of a crescent form, elevated some 15 degrees above the horizon, which is caused by the reflection of the sun's rays from the opposite highest part of the verge. The refracted rays coming from the opposite side of the earth through the dense atmosphere of the verge would so strike the eye of the observer as to cause this apparent elevation. But navigators in longitude, answering to the highest part of the verge instead of the bright appearance just noted, observe opposite the sun a dark, opaque space low in the horizon, as though there were no objects to reflect back the rays of the sun. This singular appearance is produced by the fact that the incident rays of light, as they are reflected from the lowest part of the verge, are so refracted that they fall below the eye of the observer, and thus cause this dark appearance or blank space in the horizon. Captain Ross states that in high altitudes and high latitudes, there are remarkable changes in the apparent extent of the sensible horizon. From north to south, the horizon is so limited that objects can be seen only at very short distances, while in a direction east or west, the horizon is greatly extended, and objects can be seen at an immense distance, as if upon a horizontal plane. The direction north and south is directly over the convex surface of the verge, where the horizon is extremely limited, while along the surface of the verge east and west the view is along upon the plane of the verge, and the horizon is greatly extended. This is precisely what would result from the existence of such a verge. A slight depression of the surface of the earth around the poles is wholly insufficient to produce this effect, which accords so well with this theory. Another beautiful phenomena observed by Captain Perry is the elongated appearance of the sun and moon in high latitude, with the prismatic colors observed on these occasions. According to a simple law of optics, this is due to the dense atmosphere of the verge acting like a prism and causing this elongated appearance, and the prismatic hues are due to the different refrangibility of the sun's rays. These beautiful hues may be heightened by particles of frost floating in the atmosphere. Captain Parry and others speak of the brilliant twilight of the north as being sufficient to enable them to read ordinary printed matter distinctly. This curious fact is wholly inexplicable upon the Newtonian theory, but is easy of explanation upon this. This twilight coming from the north may be caused by the sun's rays thrown into the interior through the southern opening, which by 2 refractions, 1 at each opening, and 2 or 3 reflections from the inner concave surface, would pass out at the north over the verge and produce there this strong twilight. Captain Parry states that when sailing northward in high latitude, the North Star rises over the bow of the ship to the zenith and then declines towards the stern. On the Newtonian theory, the ship must have sailed directly under the star and over and down upon the opposite side of the earth. But this cannot be true, for no navigator has sailed so far north. From the regular convexity to the interior concavity of the earth across the verge is 1,500 miles, a distance so great that a vessel in sailing over the verge would not perceive the change in her direction except from the apparent change of the heavenly bodies, or from observations of the difference in the expanse of the visible horizon. The ship going north along the deflected meridians upon and over the verge causes these apparent changes in the North Star. Further confirmation of the Sims theory is drawn from the variations and dip of the magnetic needle. The line of no variation is a line coming up through the South Atlantic Ocean over the eastern part of South America, and passing on northwest over the equator to a point a little west of Cape Hatteras, North Carolina, then through Virginia to Lake Erie, east of Cleveland, and on through Lake Huron, terminating at a point in longitude about 90 degrees west from London and in north latitude about 70 degrees. How do these facts accord with this theory? It will be remembered that the planes of the verges form an angle each with the equator, but are parallel to each other. Now, midway between the verges lies the magnetic equator. Cutting the equator of the earth at an angle of 12 degrees, and the line of no variation crosses this magnetic equator at nearly right angles. The terminus of the line of no variation is about midway between the highest and lowest parts of the northern verge. This line continued to the southern verge would also terminate about midway between the highest and lowest parts of the southern verge. These are curious facts and are entitled to consideration. If they do not fully explain the variation of the magnetic needle, they present some views which may help to clear up these mysteries of nature. The dip of the needle is another phenomenon not fully understood. This dip is nearly uniform upon the same latitude, but increases as the needle is carried north, and in high latitude answering to the location of the verge, the dip is greatly increased and becomes nearly perpendicular. The true magnetic poles are not at the points where the line of no variation terminates at the north and south, but are equidistant from this line and immediately under the highest points of the verges north and south, and the line of no variation lies midway between these magnetic poles. The needle, while it does not vary along the line to the right or left, yet as it goes northward or southward from the magnetic equator, it is attracted towards the true magnetic poles lying under the highest part of the verges, and so the dip is increased till it reaches the apex of this verge, where it is the greatest. Thus, these general facts in regard to the movement of the magnetic needle correspond with the Sims theory of the earth. The barometer also illustrates the theory, for it is well established that along the region of the verge, the mercury rises the highest, for here the atmosphere is most dense. It would be difficult to show upon any other hypothesis why the barometer should rise higher along the locality of the verge than upon the upper side of it to north or south. The aurora borealis affords the most interesting illustration. If, as Franklin supposed, this is an electrical phenomena, the question arises, why is it always exhibited in high latitude? The electric fluid pervades all nature and is excited by heat, by cold, and by friction. The sun, in his daily course, rarefies the air in the equatorial regions. It therefore rises and falls down towards the poles, causing currents from the equator towards the north and the south, where it is condensed. This process of refraction and condensation produces the aurora along the verges where the greatest condensation takes place. In proof of this view, Captain Peary and other explorers and navigators state that when in high latitudes upon and beyond the verge, the aurora is almost always seen in a southerly or southwesterly direction. Navigators in the South Atlantic, while sailing down the coast of South America, observe low in the horizon to the east and southeast several bright luminous bodies, like clouds in the sky, which become more and more elevated as the vessel goes south, until, in the vicinity of the Straits of Magellan, these clouds appear nearly in the zenith. The cause of this beautiful appearance is as yet unknown, or is only the subject of vague conjecture. Captain Sims holds that these bright clouds are produced by the light of the sun reflected from New Zealand and Van Diemen's Land, and perhaps the south part of New Holland, which lie upon the opposite side of the earth, and which in the vicinity of Cape Horn are nearly in the zenith. They are upon the southern verge, between the highest and lowest parts of it, and an observer near Cape Horn is within the southern verge or upon it, and his zenith is not a radical line drawn from the center of the earth, but is at right angles to a line equidistant from the outer and inner surfaces of the earth, and nearly at right angles to the plane of the verge, so that the opposite side of the earth would be nearly in the zenith to him, and the light thrown from these islands would present them as bright luminous bodies, always seen in the same direction, like moons reflecting the light of the sun. They do not rise and set, as do the sun and moon, and this fact gives plausibility to the explanation. All right, now this is very interesting part right here. Facts attested by good authority prove the existence of a warmer climate beyond the verge. The Indians of the interior of North America, in latitude about 60 degrees, migrate west or northwest on the approach of winter to seek a milder climate and find no sea. Hearn establishes this fact. Though these Indians thus migrate far to the northwest, they have, as Hearn informs us, no knowledge of the Pacific Ocean. All right, I'm going to stop here as a part 2 and continue on